So the
All
problem
right.
is
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. You're live, Crystal. You're Live. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. This is Tamara. I am Tamara Johnson Shealey, candidate for the United States Senate. Let's see who's going to join us. It is 8 o'clock. It is Wednesday. I'm sorry y'all can't see me, but hopefully you can hear me just fine. You can always put your comments over in the column over here over to the right. There should be a column, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter watching us. Good evening. Good evening. Let's see who's going to join us. Let's give this like 10-15 seconds. Let me pull this up on my end. I have a guest, everybody. She is a scientist. I met her this year, as a matter of fact. I met her and we immediately realized that we had a mission that we were on together. And it's funny how you meet people and you're like, you click and you click. And it was so funny because I knew I clicked with her and I didn't know why I clicked with her, but I knew I clicked with her. And I knew she was she had something that I needed to share. So I wanted to bring her on because part of my agenda, for those of you that know, hi Shamika, good evening. For those of you that have been following me, there's a part of my agenda that I am taking to the United States Senate that speaks to health and hair and health and beauty. And I don't think people understand what that means, why I even have that on as an agenda item. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Good evening, Cheryl. She said, good evening, Dr. Crystal.
hey.
Yes, good evening. So we're going to dive into this, but we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping first. If you haven't shared this, please do share. I know it's Wednesday. It's probably dinner time for you guys in a lot of places, but please share this if you're on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter. Please share this broadcast. I need to do a weekly shout out. You guys know that I have a December fundraiser that I've been diligently working towards. And raising money during the holidays, I can tell you because I've been a candidate 3 times prior to this. I know during the holidays it's tight. You know, we have children, we have families, right, Crystal? We have family. It's just tight during the holidays. And, nobody wants to talk about politics, so it's very hard to raise money during the holidays. But I have a very small, compared to what I'm going to need running this race, a 15K goal for December. 15K, that is not a lot of money. Honestly, that's a drop in the bucket compared to what I'm really going to need. But I didn't want to reach too far and too wide during the holidays. But 15K, and I want to give a shout out to Michael Hicks, who's given in the last couple of weeks. I didn't do my shout outs last week, but Michael Hicks has given. Thank you, sir. James Sumler, he's given. Thank you, sir. Mr. Gerard Lockhart, thank you. Gerard has given. Jeanette Wyatt, thank you, Jeanette. Harris Floyd, thank you. Larry Riley, thank you. Georgette Russell, thank you for giving. Mr. George Wyeth, thank you for giving. Courtney Stanberry, thank you. Donnie Gray, thank you for giving. Byron Mercier, thank you for giving. Patricia Rice, thank you for giving. Shealey Marshall, thank you. And Burnell Saxon, thank you. Thank you for those that have given in the last couple of weeks. Like I said, we got a 15K threshold that we're trying to meet by December 31st, and we're not even halfway there. We've only raised $2,377. So we got a long ways to go and a short time to do it. But I am hopeful that you guys will dig deep and help me raise the money that I need and that we need in order to take this agenda to Washington. So please dig deep and spread the word and continue to bring help bring those contributions. But so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to introduce Dr. Crystal Porter. Like I said, I met her along the way at a beauty event. That's not necessarily barber, it was a beauty event. And Dr. Crystal is a scientist, a hair scientist. And I wanted to bring her on tonight because I wanted to really explain to you why I have this agenda item around health and safety. in the beauty and barber industry. Dr. Crystal, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you. First of all, I have to just let you know how proud I am of you for taking a stand on a very tough issue. I think a lot of people don't realize the urgency in needing to really make people aware of what is needed in the industry. And I am not a hair professional in the sense of doing hair, so I'm not a practitioner of hair, but I'm definitely someone who has had a lot of research experience and a lot of education revolving hair science. And so when I think one of the reasons why we resonated is because you have a passion for wanting to make sure that the industry is uplifted and elevated to the point where it's been a long time coming.
Mm-hmm.
So as a hair scientist, majority of my years were with L'Oreal. I worked there for over 10 and a half years. And before that, I was immersed in the industry with Unilever. And so for those of you who may not know Unilever, they make Suave and Dove, and they had a product named Thermosilk when I first joined on. But basically, it was my role to really understand the impact of ingredients, the environment, and just to understand it so that we could disseminate the information about the impact of these ingredients and the different formulations as a whole on the quality of hair. So that's like my background. But since then, I have become a little bit more immersed in the health of the scalp because one of the main reasons why I left L'Oreal was to try to get something that I think is impossible, which is like work-life balance. But my daughter needed me a little bit more than my job did. So I made a very tough decision to leave the industry. But the passion of continuing to learn about hair and continuing the science of hair, particularly of those from people of or for people of African descent, that is really my passion. And so there is a huge gap in terms of knowledge for us to really personalize the care that is needed for the population that needs it. So that is what I do and what I'm still passionate about. And recently, a lot of my research has been geared towards the health of the scalp.
And I think, I don't think the average person understands the correlation between their health and their hair. Like
Mhm.
they don't equate, like that doesn't make sense. This is just my hair. It's like an extremity. It's like my arm. It's not necessarily, it doesn't have blood flowing through it. So it is just my hair. But there's people that don't understand that, you know, not only are professionals, are the exposure that they get from doing services, providing these beauty services, using these chemicals, being exposed to these ingredients. And then you putting these ingredients on your body, on your scalp, and these things absorbing. Like, there's a disconnect between health and hair and health and beauty that I, as a part of my candidacy, want to make sure, because I come from an industry where this science and this research doesn't exist. So this is why it is important for me to connect with somebody like Dr. Crystal. And this is why I wanted to bring this conversation to you tonight, because I want you to really understand that there is a direct correlation between your health and your hair, or your health and beauty. Dr. Crystal.
Yes. So, it's interesting that you mentioned that now, understanding how things are absorbed, because you and I was speaking earlier, but I'm sure a lot of the listeners or watchers have probably got wind of a new research finding from last week. And that is, they were saying that there is a link between women who have breast cancer or who have a history, family history of breast cancer. Particularly, it's called a sister study. So these are women that they've tracked, and their sisters had breast cancer, and so they're like looking at these women and keeping up with them over time, the sisters of those who have had breast cancer. And what they found is there seemed to be a link. And what that means is there isn't real evidence for us to become alarmed yet, but it definitely does show that if you wear or if you use hair dye, or they put the term straighteners in there, and that's kind of convoluted. We don't really know what that means. If you read if you scratch the surface and kind of look at the top line items that they were talking about, they talked about hair straighteners, but they didn't specify what type of straightener it was. You would hear reports and they would talk about the formaldehyde straighteners, which were like the Brazilian blowouts or the keratin treatments that were very popular about 10-ish years ago. But we don't know exactly what that means. But what the results do show, even though it's not a real cause for alarm, because there are a lot of other questions that need to be answered, but it does mean that we need to, dive in a little bit deeper to get more specific answers to, how frequently they were getting the hair color. We need to know the brand that they use. And then after we, learn about the brand, then we need to analyze the formulation to see, okay, what was the percentage of all the ingredients, and to really narrow down which ingredient was responsible for it. And one of the things that they've mentioned in some of the news outlets is that they were talking about some of the endocrine disruptors, meaning that there are ingredients that can mimic the hormones that we have, and then, kind of get the regulation of hormones out of balance, because it mimics the hormone. So it actually thinks it's having a reaction in a way that is not really conducive to, the health of our own bodies. So yes, there are a lot of external environmental influences that we really need to understand how it affects our biological processes, so that we can further understand, what really is a risk for the population that use different ingredients in different formulations.
So you said a mouthful. I'm sure everybody knows Patti LaBelle. It was like a few of her sisters all had cancer. Do you remember that story? Like it was.
I got wind of it. I remember a little bit about it.
Yeah. So it was a few of her sisters that had cancer, and so studying like what is it about certain your biological makeup, and then I guess the correlation between these ingredients and then your makeup, like how does that cause you to have like this predisposition? Is that the word to cancer?
Yes.
Yes. So you said a mouthful with that, and then you mentioned like hair color. Like most of us have some sort. Like I'm getting these strands of gray, so I keep coloring my hair, and I use like a quote unquote semi-permanent color, but I'm doing it pretty frequently because these grays are like relentless. So we expose ourselves to these hair colors, and even as a nail technician, there's certain polishes, and I don't think people know this, that certain polishes are endocrine disruptors. Like there's ingredients in nail polish that they encourage you not to polish little girls' nails when they're really small and young, because using certain brands, because there's like toluene and formaldehyde, there's all these ingredients in these products that could disrupt your hormonal balance. So this correlation between beauty and our health, too few people know this, Dr. Crystal.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And we trust a lot of, the brands to do their due diligence to make sure that, they are looking out after, our health. But to be honest with you, so there are studies done, but and I want to say basic, because sometimes it's very complicated experiments that they do. However, what is not done, particularly with people of African descent, and when I say African descent, I don't mean from necessarily the continent of Africa. I'm just talking about our ancestors came from Africa. So I like to use Black people, because that I feel that that's all inclusive, because that means there's people here in the United States, in the Caribbean, in Brazil, on the continent of Africa, but particularly with Black people, a lot of companies don't have enough information about us to really do the in-depth research that's needed to make sure that we are safe. Everything is just kind of, if you have cells that you're cultivating in a laboratory and you're trying to see how those cells interact with some of the ingredients or the formulations, you can specify, okay, here are some cells that we got from I'll say Asian people or maybe Caucasian people. And not to say that there is a specificity that won't necessarily like give an average, but we do know that sometimes, as you said, some people have more of a predisposition. And nowadays, they have precision medicine that they're using to really understand what is it specifically about an individual that makes them more susceptible to things, or that makes them more sensitive to different types of treatment. So in the field of medicine, they're actually, moving forward to consider more in-depth consider the characteristics and different health issues that we as people have, and consider those when they give, different treatment advice. But in the area of, I guess, cosmetic care, they aren't that advanced. And so that's what I'm really trying to do, trying to make sure that we can stay ahead of, what's needed so that everybody can make well-informed decisions that are specific to their individual needs.
Yeah, and it goes back to and here's a kicker, Dr. Crystal. Black people, and we'll just be, that's in very general terms, but Black people, we're afraid of science. When we think about Henrietta Lacks and we think about like the experimenting, the Tuskegee air, is the experimenting that was done on us. Not, what was I saying? The Tuskegee, what would they call that Tuskegee
experiment? It was the Tuskegee experiment.
Yeah, it's like, so we're afraid of giving data or the data collection. Like that scares the hell out of us.
Yep. I truly understand. And that is one of the reasons why I'm proud to be heading up some of the research, because when I was at L'Oreal, one of the things that was very evident when we would do studies in either Brazil or in like South Africa or Ghana or Kenya, when I would go there and they would see a Black woman was like heading things up and making sure that they were taken care of, that really does put people at ease. And there are times that, I've had to make very tough decisions because I would never, ever let anything happen to one, the data, or two, do anything that I think would harm anyone. I mean, it's not anything that I can live with, but it's great to be a part of this so that I can, really articulate why it is important for us not to just get involved in terms of, just giving information and then not know where it's going, but to give information knowing that it is going to help, your sister, your brother, your children down the line. That is what is important. And to be honest, we are really far behind as Black people in terms of having the advantages of everything that's going on. Everybody is getting personalized. I shouldn't say everybody. A large majority of people are getting individualized information about themselves so that they can, know exactly how they should exercise, how they should eat. And we are far behind on that. And we will suffer as a result of that.
Oh yeah, and so going back, so there was when you did these studies, and what one thing I can appreciate about what you're doing is its integrity in your work. Like you're not just collecting; these are people, not just specimens. Like this came from a person, and you know your approach to science and to this collection it is it's like I said with integrity. So that means a lot. And you're right. We as a people are behind, and we're the biggest consumers of. I mean, women as a whole, just in general, we're the biggest consumers of cosmetics. The FDA and those that are supposed to be safeguarding these products that we're using. There's a lot of to be said about them not doing what they need to do to protect all of us. I mean, I put lotion on every day. I mean, what am I rubbing on and then rubbing on my body? And then think about, like you said, now going back to the scalp and our hair. I mean, you have a lot of people now, Crystal, that are making products in their homes. I'm like, is this stuff? I mean, you making this stuff at your house and you're selling it? Like, I don't know what this is.
So I want to talk a little bit about that. So it's two things I want to hit on. One is, you talked about the integrity. And one of the things that we have to do when we put together any type of research plan, we want to be able to disseminate the information about our learnings to the public. So we want to publish it. But in order for us to publish it, we have to be governed. Like our research has to be, it's an oversight committee called the Institutional Review Board. And that is really an ethics board to make sure that we aren't just doing, things just because we want to do it. They have an oversight in making sure that the well-being of the people who are involved with any information we collect, that, their information is held private, and also that there isn't any shenanigans going on. So first thing I want to say that. But you raise a good point in talking about people making products out of their homes. Now, I would be the first to say that you have to start somewhere. So just because you are a kitchen chemist, that in itself is not a bad thing at all. What is bad is when you don't have the resources to be able to do the proper testing to make sure that what you're putting together, because everybody really believes, oh, just because it's all natural. And I hear this all the time and I just cringe. And I have to be honest, Tamara, I kind of cringe a little bit when you said that, we have all these chemicals, because everything is a chemical. I mean, the air we breathe is a chemical. The water that we use to wash our bodies, to brush our teeth, and, to drink is a chemical. And not to say it's chemicals in the water, I'm talking about H2O is a chemical. And I say that because I think everybody is kind of, they have this phobia over chemicals. And so it's not the chemical itself that's necessarily bad. It's not having the information on the molecular structure and its interaction with our bodies. That unknown is really what you should be afraid of. So we have a long way to go. But getting back to, people making products in their kitchen, that isn't a bad thing if they're doing the proper testing. And I have to be honest, while I know that we have to start somewhere, you have to, put forth the effort to make sure that you are doing your due diligence and getting the testing done to make sure that, what you're putting into the formulation, not just because you researched it, but you have to know how it's going to interact with the air, how it's going to interact with other ingredients, how it's going to interact with the packaging that you put it in, how it's going to interact with, the light that may be absorbed when it's stored, on a shelf. There's so many other variables that need to be considered. And a lot of people aren't considering that at all.
And this goes back to, like I said, I am not totally a one-dimensional candidate. I have a myriad of issues that I want to address. And this is one of them where because I come from the beauty and barber industry, and I see the exposure of professionals who stand behind chairs or who provide services, the things that they're breathing on a regular, what they're coming in contact with their skin. And I know that there's a lot of health issues amongst professionals that the science and the data and the research isn't there to substantiate. We know that professionals are getting sick. I know that they are. And then I know that the products that people are using, sometimes it's like those things aren't always safe. So it's like there has to be a study, and there it is a part of my agenda, and it says to establish a commission to study the need to raise health and safety standards for the beauty and barber industry. And that's what you were just talking about, Crystal, that there's standards around how you even do what you do. Standards.
Yeah. You're right. You're right. And more education is needed. I tell scientists all the time, scientists, as a scientist, I actually tell stylists all the time that, we really need to bring the science into, your industry. And it's a very easy way to go about doing it. But a lot of times it takes training to make sure that you are able to collect data on what you do. And yeah, it's time to step up with the times. And right now, I do think the industry is very stagnant and, set in their ways. And I tell people all the time, I don't compete because I don't do hair at all. But I have a ton of people who need referrals. They need to know, who they could go to and trust. And to be honest, I just have a handful of people that I can refer. Everyone who comes and seeks help, I'm like, you know what? If you're, in these particular areas, then, I know people in a few areas, but it's more widespread. We really need to elevate the industry.
And the industry as a whole, and that's why it is a part of my agenda. And beauty is beyond the look. Like there is a direct, and I go back to what I started out saying in the beginning of this broadcast, is that there's a direct correlation between health and your hair, health and beauty.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot just, do these things. And like I said, the oversight is just not there. The federal oversight is just not there.
Yeah. It really is on the honor system. They say that you must put, products out that you have tested. But as you know, you look around, you see, if you go to the beauty supply store, there is so many products out there that it's really overwhelming because you're like, okay, what really should I use? I want this particular attribute and I have no idea how to get that attribute because there's so many products out on the shelf. And I'm not even talking about products that aren't on the shelf that you can get online that you see advertisements for, or you see someone who has the gift of gab and you're like, ooh, yeah. What they say is, it sounds like exactly what I need. And then you go and buy it, but you're not asking the right questions. You're being sold by all the marketing mumbo jumbo and not really being a critical thinker and asking the important questions, not just about, oh, how is my hair going to feel after this? It should be, well, have you had your product tested by a third party? Have you actually done microbial testing? How stable is your product? Where are your ingredients sourced from? And then if they're sourced from China, for example, unfortunately, there have been studies that show that the soil contamination there is high. And so you want to make sure, and not to say you can't buy things from China, you just want to make sure that you do your due diligence in making sure that it doesn't have those contaminants, those high metal contaminants that can really do a lot of damage, especially to children.
Yeah, we have about a minute and a half. I'm gonna read some of the comments on the screen in just a second, but I would just encourage, everybody to start reading labels. I mean, I know a lot of that stuff is way over their heads, right, Dr. Crystal? But I mean, is that a great place? Is that like a start to just, at least read your labels?
Well, reading labels is a little part of it, but I mean, if you don't know, what your body responds to, it's a little bit complicated. So reading labels will get you just, not that far, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, you know, Dr. Crystal. So I'm gonna put some of
Okay.
she said, our hair is our crowning glory.
Yes.
When you lose your hair from stress, illness, or in my case, you lose your self-confidence and personal pride.
Yes. It breaks my heart. Oh my gosh. Hair loss is one of those problems that made me get into doing research on scalp health. So yeah, I feel your pain. Yeah.
She said she appreciates your work and your knowledge, Dr. Porter.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Great conversation.
Thanks.
And then she says that she's glad to hear you're pushing for more inclusiveness in research.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, we're at our 30-minute mark. I'm going to have Dr. Crystal back, but I wanted her to come on because there's an agenda item on with my candidacy for the beauty and barber industry, but it's specific to health and hair and the need to raise health and safety standards for the industry to protect our customers and to protect the workers themselves. So we have to be more mindful of the products, the ingredients, and I'm definitely going to have Dr. Crystal back because, you know, we're going to dive into the scalp and the hair, and we'll continue to have this conversation because I really want you to understand that this is a health component to my candidacy to the United States Senate. So, Dr. Crystal, any last words?
Yeah, the only last words I have is, you know, really be critical in who you believe and who you get your information from, because with, you know, all the blogs out there, or vlogs, I should say, because of YouTube, and, you know, it's a lot of information out there, but you really need to look at the credentials of who you're getting your information from. And the lines are really blurred between, you know, someone who is an influencer who's getting paid, which, you know, I understand everybody needs to eat, but you really need to be careful and make sure that the person who is disseminating the information is worthwhile to be listening to.
And tell people how they can follow you, because Dr. Crystal is doing some great work. So tell people how they can follow you.
Great. So I was talking about the scalp research we're doing. So saveourscalps.com is for professionals. But we also continue to do research through Maine Insights. That's MANEINSIGHTS.com. So Maine like hair, but MANEINSIGHTS.com. So thank you. Really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Crystal. And I will definitely have you back. And I look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.